Hi, welcome to Golden Years. I'm Lori Betts. My guest this month is Cindy McQuown. She is from Beyond Driving with Dignity. She is a professional, and we are going to be talking about aging and driving and safety. So come on back.
There is nothing wrong with your television. We are controlling transmission. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to Brunswick Area Television.
Welcome back to Golden Years, and I'm interviewing Cindy McQuown, and we are going to be talking about driving and safety today. So Cindy, tell me how you became a professional with driving and driving with dignity and safety.
And safety. Well, actually, Lori, the company that I work for is called Keeping Us Safe. It was founded by a gentleman who's from Ohio.
And I did have him on my program years ago.
Matt Gurlwell, wonderful
Matt.
man.
Yeah. He's a teddy bear.
He is, a big teddy bear, but very much cares about people and safety. And he started this program. He was a retired state highway patrolman. Started this program, quite frankly, his words to me are just tired of delivering death notices. And in situations where he really felt like it didn't have to happen. So his company really trains people like me to be Beyond Driving with Dignity professionals so that I can go out in the community. I speak to adult groups about this issue. I speak to professional groups about this issue. And I actually work directly with older adults and their families when they're trying to work around the decision of driving and driving safety as you age. And I really try to stress that my goal is not to take anyone's keys. My goal is to try and help people become more aware about how they can continue driving safer, longer, and how they can make their own decisions about when they may no longer be safe behind the wheel.
And that is a wonderful point. Because the senior gets in the car and she's on a mission and she wants to get to her destination, but you have to be so aware how driving has changed so much in our lifetime now. You know, people have the cell phones, they are texting, they are checking their email. I mean, it's not so much the senior at fault, but you have to be just so aware.
You're absolutely, and you're saying the very most important words. Self-awareness is key. And self-awareness is really what helps most people gradually adjust driving as they age. I wear glasses and I wear contact lenses. You know, my vision at night is not as good as it used to be.
It changes. I
don't
know how that changes.
Glare from the road. But for all of us, sensory processing, the information coming in and how our brain receives it and how quickly it processes that, it just slows down as we get older. That doesn't necessarily mean we're bad drivers. It may mean, because we notice or we're aware of those changes, that we just adjust our driving accordingly. So that maybe I avoid driving at night when I can, or I ask someone else to do it. Might mean I, avoid really busy intersections because I don't really like how it goes. Or like you said, many drivers are distracted. So maybe I just want to stick with really familiar routes and not get out where things are a little crazier. You know, even when an older adult does everything right, when you're 70 and older, you are still 40% more likely to die in a two-car collision than the other driver, just because of age. Age makes us more vulnerable. We don't recover as quickly when we're older. That's a factor. So even when you do everything right when you're older, you're still more at risk behind the wheel.
And just your comment with my mother-in-law, she says she avoids, like she used to love to go to Southwest Hospital and around that area and do the shopping and everything. All of a sudden, she was overwhelmed by all the traffic. It just got so busy, you know, and construction. And she said, I just can't deal with that anymore. I'd rather stay home in my living surrounding areas. So I know the stores that are local, and I take the back roads. And so right there, that is a red flag.
Well, it's a red flag, and yet what you're telling me is your mother-in-law is self-aware. She automatically has reduced driving in situations where she's become aware she's less skillful. I would say the same thing. My kids love to go to that mall in Strongsville. That's the last place in the world I want to be. The traffic it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, the traffic is terrible.
Crazy.
There's multiple things going on, there's lots of lights, it's just too much. Again, what happens as we age is the incoming information, we may be less likely to screen out background noise. It takes longer to process all kinds of information that might be coming in us all at once. And so we might find in situations like your mother-in-law said, or like me at the mall, that we feel more irritable or tense behind the wheel. And so just noticing that, well, we tend to avoid it. That's a useful thing. That is part of keeping us safe. And that's a good thing. You know, people can do things like stay on familiar routes, drive less trafficked routes, drive during the daytime hours, making sure you're driving in good weather conditions, taking precautions like a pull-through parking spot instead of having to back out. All of those things can be safety measures that somebody just puts in place, and they kind of happen naturally. Nobody needs to tell you to do it. You do it because you recognize, yeah, I just don't feel the same about my driving anymore. And that's all good sound practices to keep yourself safer behind the wheel.
Now, how would a child, a young adult child, get a hold of you and say, you know what, I saw, you know, Cindy on your show. How can I reach her? Do you have lessons, or do you have area talks? Or can it be a one-on-one meeting with you?
Well, kind of all of the above. And really, one of the things that I do is a self-assessment with an older adult when there is a safety concern. You know, it's all good when somebody recognizes and makes changes based on what they see and what they're comfortable with. That works out well. It's great when somebody like my mom, who chose to retire herself because she recognized she was starting to get confused between the gas and the brake. My mom retired on her own. But sometimes people don't choose to do that. Dementia, cognitive impairment can interfere with self-awareness.
We were fortunate with my mother-in-law. She fell, she had hip surgery, and she had started dementia issues.
Yeah.
I took her to the BMV because it was her 90th birthday, and we had to renew it. And I just said, you know what, Mom, right now we have to renew this. Yeah. You'll have to take a test at a later date. And she was fine with it. Yeah. Now, right now she'll say, okay, I want to get in the car and I want to see if I could drive. And we're like, can you? Can you literally walk into a car and put yourself in the car? And she said, no, I don't think I could. And sometimes things work out for a reason.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so you can't, I guess kids have to realize, you know, you can't hit it head on and say, okay, you're done driving. You know, you have to go with an approach, using a professional, and saying, okay, we have to make a decision.
Yes.
But let them helping you make the decision.
And facilitating and empowering an individual to notice and be aware of things that maybe they hadn't been before. And that's one of the reasons I really value the Beyond Driving with Dignity program and the self-assessment, is that I will go to an older adult's home, sit with them. I do a 3.5-hour self-assessment.
Do you have their attention that long?
Well, we take breaks if we need to, but part of it involves cognitive screening to see how someone's cognitive skills are and if there's a diminished cognitive skill, as well as I get in the car and do an old-fashioned drive-through with them to really do a practical drive with folks on a familiar route so that I can see what is it that others might be concerned about, and we can have a real conversation. The whole issue around driving and safety, nobody wants to be told you can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
And especially if you've been driving for 60, 70 years, you don't want someone else to come in and say, well, you're done. Driving is a key to independence, and that's very important. I really caution people at just making that decision without really considering an older adult's input, because that really can contribute to depression, a feeling of being defeated, totally loss of control. Not good feelings.
Another change in your life.
Another change in your life that you don't have any say over. So the dignity part of Beyond Driving with Dignity is really important. I sit down with the older adult. We go through a series of activities together. I get in the car with them, and then I can give them some objective feedback about where they may have risk zones and where they may still have some strengths. And sometimes I may suggest to them, it looks like you're at risk behind the wheel, for yourself or for other people. But at least we can have it, and it can be based on objective information, and it can give feedback to that driver and to their family.
And you do need an outsider's help.
Right.
Because sometimes mother-daughter, son-daughter, oil and water, they just don't.
Right.
They
Well,
have
there's a
big
big
issues
difference
there.
between saying, Mom, you're a terrible driver, versus me saying, Mrs. Smith, I'm concerned that we approached that stop sign and you didn't show any indication of slowing down at all until I said you need to stop 3 times. I'm concerned about what would happen if I hadn't been in the car. There's a little bit of difference in that. And that's the kind of approach that I take. It's really objective. It's based on, again, there's a very strong relationship between cognitive abilities and driving abilities. And when somebody's not showing an ability to kind of pass a cognitive screening test, there really are some strong implications about how that translates to driving ability. If I, for example, draw a clock and I draw it backwards, which is one of the screening tools that is quite common in dementia screening, that translates to how do you read street signs? How do you notice when there's a stop sign? How do you notice at an intersection, with the arrows, which way you're supposed to go? Again, left-hand turns are a real risk. With every year beyond 65, there's an 8% increase in your chance of having an accident in making a left-hand turn. Intersections, too. Yeah. Intersections are a real danger zone.
Your judgment.
Yes. Judgment, depth perception, all those things factor into driving skills. I am saddened to see in the local paper, because I'm looking, but you can't really go more than a couple weeks without seeing another fatality involving an older driver and intersections. Again and again and again, you see intersection. 40% increase in fatalities at intersections for adults over 70. So it's a dangerous spot, and it has to do with gauging the speed of the oncoming traffic, your own speed at pulling out, your depth perception, how far away is that driver? And those are the things that this program was designed to prevent. It doesn't have to happen. And that, I think, is where the self-assessment can be really helpful. It's identifying those folks who really are not safe to continue.
And I'm sure you have people that are, okay, they sit there and they say, okay, maybe you are right, Cindy, but does it go the other way, too?
Where they might say, but I'm not giving my keys up.
Yeah.
Then it's a matter of sitting with that person and their family and talking about, and really getting with them about, what's that about? What are your fears about no longer driving? Well, I'd have to depend on somebody, or I wouldn't be able to go do what I want to do. And that's a big, important part of what I do as well. I always say, and you know what, you don't have to wait until your driving is becoming impaired to begin to develop your plan B. We all should have a plan B. What if I walk out of here today and I break my leg?
Oh, yeah.
Or somebody hits me because they're texting and I have a leg injury and I cannot drive. I have to have a plan B, right? We all need a plan B, not just because we're older, but because things happen. And that plan B could be using public transportation. We have a great public transportation in Medina County. reaching out to my friends,
Exactly.
having friends. And in fact, some people find when they retire from the driver's seat into the passenger seat, they actually have more of a social life because they're reaching out to people that they didn't spend time with before.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come right back.
When you do something online, make sure you won't regret it. Protect yourself before it happens.
When you post something online, it is there forever. That's a long time. Even if you delete something, it is still there, somewhere.
If you post something embarrassing, it could affect your life and your job. Also, don't trust everyone you meet online. It could be a 40-year-old saying that they're 15.
Make sure not to share your personal information like your name. That could possibly put you and your family in danger. Remember, once you hit send, there is no going back.
Be safe. A message from Girl Scout Troop 90073, Brunswick, Ohio.
Welcome back to Golden Years. I am interviewing Cindy McQuown from Beyond Driving with Dignity. And we are talking about just having a real nice conversation about driving and issues that pop up. And maybe it's time to get a limo driver, someone that you could be able to call, reach out to people, and you could rekindle relationships and saying, Miss Sally, do you think you would mind driving me to the hairdresser this week? How would someone reach out to you to make that happen?
I, again, make personal appointments with folks who are interested in a self-assessment. Again, I'm also available to speak to groups of adults or groups of professionals about these issues, the continuing education program that I provide. But again, for the self-assessment, in any of those services, all you need to do is call me and we set up an appointment that's convenient.
For everybody involved.
For everybody involved. And, again, the advantage, a lot of people, a couple of things come up when I do these self-assessments. One is, well, why would I do that as opposed to just, my mom won't know if I just yank the cable and say your car doesn't work anymore and you're not going to drive.
You have to let them be involved.
Well, and the value of having a learning conversation is respectful. Again, just because I'm older does not mean I don't have the right to make my own decisions. We have a process that takes away the right to make decisions. It's a legal process. It shouldn't be one that strains family relationships. An older driver deserves to be respected and to be included. And this process really involves them. And again, it brings it back to helping them with being aware of what are the concerns that people are having, so that they can then move to that decision, hopefully on their own. At least they can agree, yeah, I can see where I'm not driving safely and why people in my family might be concerned. Then we have the ability to make some parameters and some arrangements around their driving. People that make that decision for their loved one, again, it strains the relationship.
Yes, it does.
It also really takes away, again, loss of choice contributes to depression, contributes to giving up, contributes to just, why am I here? So respect is really critical. Honoring somebody's input, listening to them. Again, 9 times out of 10 when I sit down and I talk to an older driver, what are your worries about not driving? And we can work on what else you can do, because you don't have to drive. There are lots of cultures in the world where people don't drive. They get back and forth from places without cars. So we need to begin to wrap our minds around what are some other avenues to let you continue to live the lifestyle that you're accustomed to. Because no way should somebody who's choosing to retire from driving, should they ever have to compromise the lifestyle that they lead.
And it would, like I said before, it would be a change. So allow your child to be part of your day. You know, you could make it the hairdo,
Yep.
the bank. You could do lunch.
Right.
You know, do everything all in one day if you can. You know, or another day when you have a doctor's appointment. Then, you know, just use somebody else.
Right.
I mean, driving isn't always the best thing in the world to do. I mean, there's days I don't want to be on the road with all this crazy traffic. You mentioned South Park Mall. It's just amazing how one day you could just be on the road and at a different time, and all of a sudden just traffic is so heavy. You know, and there's just so much construction, you know, and then the accidents and weather permitting, you know. Maybe it's time to say, okay, I want to turn over my keys because I want you to help me. You know, start another relationship in your area.
But again, to be able to make that decision and to also have a plan and have a sense that I'll be able to maintain my freedom and independence, because those are very important to all of us.
I know, and a lot of people know that they want to get out. You know, I need to go to the store. You don't really need to go to the store. You just want to be able to get out of the house, you know, to visit or to be with people.
Right. And again, those are part of sitting down with someone when I'm having a learning conversation in the self-assessment, part of what we talk about. Who are the other people in your life? How can we make sure, if you choose to retire from driving, that you can continue to do all of the things that you want to do? Whether it's go to the mall or go out to lunch or get to your doctor's appointments. You know, we can take a look at how to make those things happen, because no one should have to compromise their freedom just to be safe.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, what else do you want to tell my viewers?
I want to tell them maybe a recap of things just to stay safe is self-awareness. Remember, pay attention, notice. It's one thing if your spouse says you're a lousy driver. It's another thing if your spouse and the lady next door and the minister, and you know, the more people who are concerned about you, the more you maybe need to pay attention. To do things to stay safe, drive familiar routes. Drive in good weather conditions when at all possible. Avoid those intersections, make right-hand turns wherever you can, pull through parking. You know, those are all good safety things. Aerobic activity, physical activity, has a very strong relationship to improved driving skills. They've done studies on drivers and looked at those who engaged in regular physical activity versus those who didn't. And there's a strong relationship between exercise and maintaining good driving skills. So physical activity, when you are able to do that, is a good thing to maintaining your safety behind the wheel. And I think the last thing I would say is just, you know, be willing to consider when you may be putting yourself at risk or others, and don't be afraid to have that conversation.
Be
It's
open-minded.
better to be safe than to not be here. You know, my program is all about preventing tragedies before they happen. So I encourage adult children, start the conversation now before something is going to happen. I use those articles I see in the paper as a point of conversation. Wow, you know, that's a good way to start a conversation. Did you see that story in the paper about the gentleman who ran the intersection? Talking with your loved ones. Talk before it becomes a crisis.
The statistics are overwhelming.
Yeah, they are. They are overwhelming.
When you see that in black and white and you think, wow.
And it doesn't have to happen. And last, and you know, it's always, I'm just a phone call away. Would be glad to have conversations with people if they have questions about my programs, if they have an interest in setting up an appointment. Any call is welcome.
So can they go to a website and see what you're all about, what the program entails?
They can go to www.keepingussafe.com. That is the organization. This is a national organization. I am listed on that website.
Okay.
And then I just tell people here in Medina County to give me a call. And we'll
Okay.
set up a conversation together.
And so, and do you have like questions on the website?
There are
start?
resources on that website. You can find out about, there's actually what's called a family agreement you can begin to look at that's free and downloadable at the Keeping Us Safe website. We also have a workbook that if somebody thinks they might want to just check it out through the workbook. I have those available for sale. You can order them online as well.
Because I know a lot of people, when people come in the store and they just unload, they'll say, and I don't know what I'm going to do about mom and dad's driving.
Right.
And I said, well, there is a program out there. And sometimes the child wants to read up on it to say, okay,
Yes, so
how
they
do I
feel-
start? How do I get into this conversation?
Right.
Because pointers are always helpful.
Pointers are helpful. Yeah, and knowledge is power. Get more information. Speak from the heart. I always tell people, you know what, just start with, Mom, I'm concerned, or Dad, I feel worried about you. Or, here's the thing that we all noticed with my own mom was, Mom, I feel uncomfortable riding with you. I really care about you, but I don't want to ride with you, and I feel uncomfortable having the kids ride with you.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and that
It's
should probably
just
hit home.
starting the conversation. Could we talk about this? And in the most non-threatening way, and keeping in mind, suggesting to someone to give up car keys is scary. It's scary. To respect your loved one. We want to make sure that you maintain all the freedoms that you value. We'd like to talk about your safety.
Which is a very, very good point. And they have to step back and they have to say, okay, I'm here to help you, Mom. Or Dad.
Right.
Whatever it might be.
And then when you get with somebody that says, I'm not talking to you, that's a good time to call. Having
That's a challenge.
It is a challenge, but sometimes having a third party, I'm okay with being the bad guy. You
got broad shoulders.
I do. Having a third party come in and trying to balance so that you can maintain your positive relationship with somebody. Then it's not your son or your daughter saying you should retire. It's a third party that's going to sit down with you and go over a whole lot of information and help you take a look at your own driving abilities in an objective way and give you feedback. And then puts the decision back on you. Here's all the risks. What do you think, Mr. Jones? Do you think you're safe behind the wheel?
And then you leave the house, and then so Mom has all this information, puts it aside, and then you could bring it up a couple days later and say, okay, how did you feel about that
That's right.
conversation we had?
Right.
And then, like you said, let them be part of it.
That's
'cause
right.
you don't want to pull any surprises on them, because that could be an ugly situation. Well, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you, Lori, so much for asking. It's delightful.
Thank you. And you were a valuable form of information. And please, we love all the seniors, and we don't want any harm to get to you. So if this is a topic that you need to address, give Cindy a call, and there's never a stupid question to be asked.
That's right.
So thank you for watching Golden Years, and we will see you next month.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids.
Keep up to date with your community by visiting the City of Brunswick official website at www.brunswick.oh.us.
Today is Saturday. Salad on Saturday, fruit on Friday, throw a ball Thursday. Water Wednesday, touch your toes Tuesday. Let's move Monday, swap us next Sunday.
60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. So keep them active and eating well every day. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov.